Hello and welcome to News 9. I'm Aditya Kaul and this is the Diplomat. India and Denmark have had diplomatic ties ever since 1949. But that has been elevated to a green strategic partnership in 2020 with emphasis on renewable energy and energy transition. How is the relationship now progressing and what do we expect in years and months from now? Joining us is the ambassador from Denmark to India, Ambassador Freddy Svane. Thank you very much for joining us. I want to begin by asking you, Ambassador, at your residence here in New Delhi, about how the experience in India has been like. You are one of the ambassadors, one of the kind, I would say, who has spent over a decade here. You've been here since 2010. Should I call you an honorary Indian already? Or how's the experience really been like, experiencing people, cultures, traditions here?
Thank you very much indeed for inviting me to your program. As you rightly said, I've been here for a decade or more. When I left first time, I gave an interview to Doordarshan, and they asked me more or less the same question. I said, when we came in 2010, India was just a country to us. After a number of years, having witnessed the Republic Day parade, it became a nation.
Yes.
And when we left, after having crisscrossed your beautiful nation, it became a living civilization. Mm-hmm. Why? Because wherever you go in India, you will find cultural tradition, practices, way of expressing yourself in food, in languages, and so forth. So you have been able to maintain this culture throughout thousands of years. Mm. So obviously I've seen a lot in India. I've seen how India has transformed from being a very kind of inward-looking to a global player with a very strong footprint in all global affairs. So that's a very interesting journey also for myself to see how this nation has developed over these years.
Well, a lot of development has certainly happened, but have you picked up some Hindi as well through the process, or you're still picking up some language lessons?
I still pick up, so I can say Mera naam Freddy hai as an example. And when I had Hindi lessons many years ago in Denmark, I said, I don't want to learn the language, I want to get a kind of recipe to detect, to really decode the culture. Uh-huh. But I said, however, I need to know the most important sentence in Hindi, so I can navigate freely in India. And my Hindi teacher, who was from Punjab, said, impossible. But next day she came back and said the following: the most important sentence in Hindi would be, Mera driver kahan hai?
So, for an ambassador, for sure. Yes.
Yes, so I can go from A to B.
Yes.
But I can follow a speech if I focus on it and I know more or less what is the subject, so I can follow that. But how much you understand and to what level is also a part of the diplomatic textbook. Don't reveal how much you understand, because that gives you an advantage.
See, 14 years is a long time. And
Very long
time. I'm
time.
sure that you visited through the length and breadth of the country.
Yes.
Are there any favorite places for you? And also, when it comes to cuisine, every few kilometers it changes.
Yeah.
Any favorites there?
Yeah, but it's a little bit, where do you feel at home? I feel at home where I am with my family. And of course, I feel at home everywhere in India, whether it's in Tamil Nadu, Kerala, or in Gujarat. I've been to Gujarat many, many times, or in Kolkata, wherever. So India is also about tasting. And so I feel at home anywhere in lovely India. And when I meet people with various backgrounds, also in the remote areas, then I get the genuine feeling of this is a huge nation, bigger than Europe. So I feel at home everywhere.
Well, Ambassador, I will ask you about the Green Strategic Partnership. But one question in my mind, I was watching one of your old videos in which you said that we would love India to have more wind turbines and windmills. Have you achieved that objective, or do you think that's a step-by-step process still in progress?
Everything is a step-by-step process. I was in Kaul last couple of days to pay a visit to the huge Adani project, which is mind-boggling. Of course, we also saw the wind turbines, and Denmark is really good at wind turbines and so forth. But I also saw that Adani and I've seen other companies also are capable of handling this kind of technology. So my wish is only to secure that we can be a partner to the Viksit Bharat vision, because this huge nation, today you'll find people living in medieval conditions, into the most futuristic conditions. My view, my wish is that we contribute to that, will be a source of inspiration, and hopefully India will take benefit from that. But I'm not into what I will call teaching nor preaching. I'm not telling you what to do or not to do. That's not on my menu card. I'm also of the very, very strong view that Denmark, as an example, should be a source of inspiration for India and the Indians, whether it's commercially, in other ways and so forth. But we also like to take inspiration from India. We can learn a lot from India. So do we have many Danish turbines? Yes. Could we have more? Yes, we'd like to. But it's also about the price tag. India is about affordability and resilience. Can the Western technology reach that? Not at any point of time. So therefore we have to work, and we work very closely with the Indian government, and that's why we have the Green Strategic Partnership, which sets out a kind of compass for what we can do together.
Well, Ambassador, I have more questions on green transition, on trade, business, and a lot more.
Yes,
but why
please.
don't you take the seat first, and we'll take the interview
As
forward.
long as I'm in the driver's seat, that will be perfect.
Absolutely. Ambassador, you spoke about wind turbines and windmills, and of course, it could be a win-win situation for both India and Denmark. But to a larger question of climate change and energy transition and collaborations in that field, what are India and Denmark doing in this regard together?
As I mentioned initially, we have agreed on this Green Strategic Partnership, and climate change, what we do together, not only for the two countries but also beyond, is very much part of that. And it was in fact the first of its kind, both for India but also for Denmark and globally. So there we are trying to identify actions, activities where we can play a role, where we can be a source of inspiration to the Indian side. It goes without saying that, and I fully agree to that point, namely that the private sector has to really take the major decision. Of course, policy will have to be taken by the policy level and the policy makers. But we bring in a lot of companies, and we are also born with the conviction that we have to transfer our technology. We have to generate skilling in India. You have a lot of youngsters who are unskilled, and they would need to be skilled and so forth. We are also generating and creating jobs, because green transition is also about generating jobs. And we have just been asked to come out with a curriculum for offshore wind. So you'll need a lot of skilled labor force that can be part of that new business. So we are bringing in instructors and trainers who will train the Indian side, so you have your own supply chain one way or another. So we do a lot of things, but it's also about grid connection, power outlook that we are working on together with the Indian side. It's also about water at large, because you have 4% of the water resources, you have 17-18% of the population and the land masses. So obviously we bring in some of our skills, and then it's up to your side to decide how we can work. And of course we have a lot of interactions and discussions. Can we do more together in a multilateral forum? Can we take things to the next level? And as an example, we joined the International Solar Alliance at some point of time, and we just, when the General Assembly took place a couple of weeks ago, we also launched a report about the readiness for green hydrogen in Africa. So we are also working in that context with the Indian side to secure that we can have a common platform that will go beyond the pure bilateral relations. So it was a lengthy answer, but it was a great answer, my friend.
Of course, can't disagree on that. But Ambassador, you briefly also mentioned that you visited on invitation of Gautam Adani, the world's largest renewable energy park in Khada, and also the Mundra port, the largest port logistics industrial hub. How was that experience, one? And do you see not just Adani, but industrialists in India all across trying to build on the Indian industries, the Indian technology, and perhaps replacing that with the Chinese ones?
Yeah, I saw it happening just in front of my eyes. It was really an eye-opener. We have all heard about Adani, and there was a Hindenburg report and all that, and coal mining and so forth. But coming out, seeing is really believing. It's gigantic what they are doing at Kaul with the solar park, which is the world's largest solar park. Very next to, they will soon also start developing the green hydrogen park. So as a group, Adani is really contributing to the green transition, not only for India, which of course is needed, but also for the world. I've seen other groups, conglomerates, but also individual companies doing the same. And you know, this Viksit Bharat, where India becomes a developed nation, perhaps even a leader of the developed nations, is so wished, and I am a strong supporter of it, because you have 1.4 billion people.
Right.
If India fails, it's not only harming India, it will harm the whole planet. So there's no equation for a better life, more sustainable life, and a better planet without India being part of it. India has to be part. And it goes without saying that the huge investments that you have to do can only come from the private sector. And they know how to do it cost effective, but also know how to bring in technologies and secure an Indian platform. We saw the fantastic new production of solar panel. We in the West, we helped China to build up this years back, and now the Indian side is taking it back. And we saw how advanced the production, as an example, at this solar modular factory. So, seen from my point of view, the stronger India is, the better. And don't forget that India is a democracy. So that makes a huge difference, and we want to see more.
Unlike some of our neighbors.
Yeah, but we are all surrounded here, there, and everywhere with neighbors and nations who do not subscribe to democracy as a basic principle. And India being the world's largest democracy, of course, you stand out in this region. And we believe in a democratic, strong India, because the people's voice is so important. Also when it comes to green transition, nothing can happen without the support of the people.
Well, a democratic, strong and resilient India will always be there. And I will come to democracy and dictatorship.
Yes.
But one question that I want to ask you is also about the business and trade ties between India and Denmark. I believe the economic ties are currently in India's favor.
Yeah.
How do you see that progressing currently?
Yeah, but you know, it goes in both directions. Obviously, with the opportunities in India, and we don't see India not only, it's not just a market, because a market where you sell and you take home your profit, it's long gone. India is a place where you invest, transfer technology, you generate jobs, opportunities, and so forth. So, of course, that will also impact a little bit our trade balance. But today, it's very difficult to measure the interaction, the commercial interaction, the economic interaction, just through the bilateral trade statistics, because a lot of Danish companies will invest through Singapore or other places and so forth. So we don't see the real X-rate kind of measurement of where are we and so forth. But one thing which stands out is that the CII of Denmark, DI, they made a report last year, and that report stated that more than 33% of all Danish companies were looking towards and are looking towards India for new investments, more investments. And we see it almost every day that Danish companies are coming in here with their technologies, they're investing and so forth. And energy is a good example. Water is another example, logistics another example. So we are there because India is growing and India needs to grow, and we like to be a partner to that.
Coming to people contact and tourism per se, do you see a similar pattern where a lot of Danish people are also interested in coming to India, be it for business, be it for purely tourism, etc.? Because I'll tell you, Ambassador, over the last 30 to 40 years, my own father has been in the tourism industry, and has traveled with thousands and thousands of Danish people, so much so that we often tell him that if you go to Copenhagen, probably people on the street might recognize him. But on a more serious note, how do you see tourism industry? Do you also feel that apart from government to government, there is also private stakeholders who are playing a significant role, perhaps including the VFS and others, easing the visa regime for Schengen countries, etc., and involving more and more people, and perhaps a lot of meetings, etc., between them, and a kind of an assimilation?
I'm happy that you asked this question, and I'm happy that your father is so well known in Copenhagen and beyond. We see an upwards trend of both cultural and people-to-people exchanges. We have an agreement with the Indian government on cultural exchange, so that's perfect. That's a kind of institutional frame for that. But we also have the Air India is flying 5 times weekly now upon Copenhagen.
Incredible.
And that brings a lot of Indian tourists to Denmark and beyond. And I sincerely believe that people-to-people interaction is so important. One thing which I think is so interesting is that there's hardly any Danish family or adult person, who has not really got acquainted with yoga. So the World Yoga Day, which we also are supporting, and we supported right from the beginning, has become integral part of our life. The food, there are so many Indian restaurants in Denmark where you can get butter chicken or paneer and all that. And the Indian vegetarian dishes are getting so popular. So we see a lot of that. We also see a lot of Danes coming here for kind of Ayurvedic treatments. We see a lot of people doing river rafting in Rishikesh. We see people coming here to really dive deep into their spirituality, going to yoga resorts and so forth. So India is the prime destination for people who like to dig into incredible India. So the guy, Amita Kant, who framed that, was a great guy and is a great guy because he put a label on India which will resonate with all of us.
To more complex issues, Ambassador, how does Denmark see the regional security challenges in Asia, vis-a-vis India? And especially, are you supportive of the Indo-Pacific strategy, of which, of course, India is an integral part? There's been a lot of support from the Western countries. So how do you see New Delhi's increasing role in stabilizing the situation, particularly when it comes to Asia-Pacific? And I know the country that I am mentioning here, China, when it comes to keeping China under check.
But I mean, we see, and we are happy to see, a strengthened role of India in the region, but also geopolitically and geostrategically. Denmark being one of the bigger, if not among the 5 biggest maritime nations, we are so dependent on freedom of navigation as an example. And obviously, if the borders are, let's say, controlled or being controlled by powers who are not allowing for free navigation, that will impact not only our economy, but also our way of operating globally. And we believe in multilateralism and in respect for all these universal principles. And we see India standing up firmly, and therefore what you are doing in the Quad, what you're doing in Indo-Pacific at large, so important also for us. So we are a big supporter of it. And I like also this notion of strategic autonomy, where India is defining its own national interest.
Yes.
I'm not in any way personally or diplomatically trying to convince India to move from one side to another side. I rather, given my experience in insight, I rather prefer an independent but strong India who can really play and take up its role that you have to and you will do. So therefore, what we are seeing these years, where India is really moving out of its kind of a little bit of domestic kind of focus and now playing a role globally and regionally so important and very wished by our side. And Honorable Prime Minister Narendra Modi is now also building up a legacy as a big international leader, global leader within foreign and security policy. And that's needed, and we would like to work even closer with India in that regard as well.
Well, Ambassador, since you mentioned strategic autonomy, I have to ask you this, that when the External Affairs Minister or the Indian government says that India did not object to the Western countries when they were inking deals with Pakistan or extending their friendship with Pakistan, then why should the Western countries object when India is inching closer to Russia or having traditional or historical ties? I'm asking you this question because of a lot of Western partners have raised eyebrows and questions ever since the beginning of the Russia-Ukraine war, especially when it comes to energy and, of course, oil purchase from Russia by India.
Yeah, or even weaponry,
Yes.
arms and so forth. I have tried in my years, being the Danish ambassador to India, I have tried to explain not only to my colleagues here, but also back home, that you can't just act on what you see and what is happening as we speak. There is a history to each and everything. And I think we should not forget the fact that when India became independent, India was a poor country, nobody took any interest. The West chose to partner with Pakistan and so forth. And then suddenly you were attacked by your neighbors and China in 1962, and you had to build up your own deterrence. So I'm not in any way criticizing India. I'm trying to put nuances to what India is doing and why you're doing it. And I think hopefully that India, through its historically defined position as a player with strong ties to Russia, but also ties to Ukraine, could play a facilitating role, whatever can be defined, in bringing this unprovoked war to an end. But we all know that India has to grow. You have a need of power. So therefore, you need to import raw oil. There's a price cap, so it secures that it will not go into the skies. But the world has to survive, and we all need oil. It's a fossil fueled world we are living in. We might expect it to be green. We might hope it will become green at some point of time. So, but to think that some will say we have to drag India from the Russian camp or a friendship with Russia into a different camp, it will not happen. And it's basically not our interest. We would like to see a strong, independent, self-defined, when it comes to national interest, India. Then on the arms side, if you look into the security situation in this region and the one that you have with your neighbors, your deterrence is so dependent on Soviet and Russian platforms. So on our side, it's simply not in our interest that you suddenly is left without any deterrence because you have to defend your own interests, you have to defend your own territory.
Right.
So in that context, we are also doing whatever we can to help India in its ambition to diversify also on the arms side. And I think we have seen a number of agreements recently and visits recently. We see the Americans, we have just had the German Chancellor here and so forth. So you see a diversification of that particular field happening as well. So India stands where India is, and you can dwell with the past and you can enjoy the present, but you can also dream of the future. And that's what we are doing. We try to inspire India to become much more independent, whether it's an energy, the green transition, whether it's a deterrence. We also like to secure that we will be a partner to India becoming much more independent, also in that particular field.
Well, Ambassador, in 2024, we've seen almost 64 elections throughout the globe.
Yeah.
We also see changes in global governance structures, and these elections and the new ideologies or governments taking shape and also making a difference to global conflicts and the new international order. But how do you see the most recent one in the United States, where Trump presidency could potentially have an impact on the Russia-Ukraine war. Interestingly, Dr. Jaishankar mentioned just a couple of days ago that with the new presidency, a lot of the world is looking with fear towards President Trump, but he also said India isn't one of them. How do you see that?
I think the world is far better prepared for the second Trump presidency. I also think that Trump is far better prepared for his second round, so to say.
That's right.
I think my prime minister said when she called the president-elect Trump, said in her kind of press remarks afterwards that he's a businessman. So a businessman will normally say, this is my price, and the other side say, I will pay this, and so forth. But then when you have done a deal, you have a deal. So obviously, US is undergoing a kind of transformation, and it's for the Americans to pick whoever they want as a president. I think the worst scenario that we could have looked into was if there was no clear winner. And we got a very clear winner. The US democracy has spoken very clearly, and now it's for President Trump with his team, which looks very able, really to define how US should be domestically developing, but also what kind of role US should play internationally. And India, as well as us, will have to adapt to that. We have to partner with the US to find out how can we secure our interests. But one good thing that Trump made during his first presidency was to tell a lot of the Europeans, but also Japan and others, who had been dependent on the US deterrence, US finance, protection, that you have to pay for your own security.
Right.
And Denmark has increased our defense budget drastically. Many other countries have done that. So now we are all taking responsibility. And the time where you can ask others just to help you out, and then you might spend more money on welfare, but others will pay for you and not have the same amount of money available for let's say, for welfare and so forth. That's not fair. So I think that's one of the bigger achievements that came from the first presidency of Trump. And now we are looking into what will happen. We have the Inflation Reduction Act, which sucked in tons of green projects to US because there were a lot of support and so forth. Many of them might not even have stand a chance because they're simply too bad and technology is not proven and so forth. So we all have to adapt to what I call the new reality. But the strong part of it is that it was a democratic election. People spoke like they have done here in India. Now we are looking into elections in Maharashtra, and today I think we have the first phase in Jharkhand. So democracy is strong. And I recall when we had the Lok Sabha elections earlier this year, we were all taken by this will be a huge victory for the ruling party, and it turned out a little bit different. But that's also democracy.
It
and
is.
Those who are sitting outside and blaming India for not being a democracy and so forth, I think they were proven wrong, because you had a democratic voice that came up with a very strong message. Mm-hmm. And it's for the politicians in a democracy to take note of that and adjust or follow whatever is the wish of the democratic voice of a country.
Well, I'm glad you touched upon the Indian elections, because that was going to be my next question. But I would still want you to touch upon it, in the context of Jammu and Kashmir, where there were a lot of concerns, both of terrorism, etc., and how India perhaps was pushing in a lot of military, etc. there. But over the years, ever since the 370 nullification, we've seen a lot of changes out there. We've seen democracy being restored in the form of assembly elections and then Lok Sabha elections. And we've also seen lesser amount of terror attacks, radicalization, infiltration happening, although the scourge of terrorism unfortunately remains. How do you see this transformation in Jammu and Kashmir? Have you yourself visited Kashmir ever?
I have. I went there on a tour to get an idea what was the impact of the abrogation of 370. I'm a strong supporter of it. This is about also to do away with constraints, limitations that would not allow people really to benefit from economic progress, political freedom, democracy, and all that. So and even women empowerment. I think it's strange to have part of the nation where you have special rules and so forth, and we all know that Article 370 was just an interim rule that had to be done away with at some point of time.
Yes.
And I'm a strong defender of it, and I think I've seen with my own eyes, but also in my interactions with people from there, that things have changed to the better. Can it be better? Can it be improved? Obviously, and it has to be. And we all have to condemn terror. Nobody can be in support of terror, so whether it's state-run, state-supported, or whether it's different extremists, organizations fueling terror and doing radicalizing people, it doesn't serve the interests of no one. And therefore we have to stand together in order to secure that the terror at all levels, wherever it happens, is being really fought against and also handled in such a way there's no, let's say, continued sufferings. One attack is one attack too much. And therefore we are I'm so happy to see that 370 apparently is the right road. And we saw the elections in Jammu Kashmir. Nobody thought it was possible. It was possible. It might not have come out with a result that each and every person in the power center wanted, but it's still a democratic process, and it came out with a strong result. And I am of the very strong opinion that this democratic election that happened on a very different set of rules compared with when Article 370 was in power and so forth, that it will lead to even stronger progress, economic progress, political progress, democratic progress. So it's a good thing.
Well, that's great. One important and controversial question is also the diplomatic spat between India and Canada right now. And you have witnessed it yourself, it growing ever since the G20 happened in Bharat Mandapam and Justin Trudeau was here. And then there were allegations and counter allegations from Canada and India. Now, at this moment, we see no High Commissioner, we see no Deputy High Commissioner, we see no First Secretary or a political councillor. So the dealings are actually happening at the level of the Second Secretary or the Third Secretary. How would you sense the diplomatic climate between India and Canada right now, and what would be your advice or your expectation in this new international order where mature democracies perhaps should be on the same page instead of accusing each other?
I think two comments. First and foremost, the relationship is very frosty.
Yeah,
that's for sure. And the way in which it just took its departure shows how serious this issue is. And obviously, you can't have a situation where there's such a difference between normal interactions between democracies, and then on the other hand, you have a terrorist movement who is really destroying opportunities and a friendly relationship. Obviously, it's for India and Canada to find a way out of it. I myself had the same experience during my first tenure. We had the Perulia arms drop case.
Yes.
And I was put literally in the doghouse and felt a little bit the same as my Canadian colleagues. But we never, and I think that is important to keep in mind, we never turned it into a kind of political kind of battle.
Yes.
It was a kind of a legal battle. It was about one person and so forth, but we never took it into the political agenda at home, and it was not taken into the political agenda in India. And obviously what we see with the Khalistanis and so forth having a role and playing a role, that's a different ball game. And it's also, therefore, consequentially, it's also having a huge impact on the relationship. Whether the bedrock has been hit or not remains to be seen. But Canada being a G7 country, India being a leader of G20 and increasingly being a global player, it's sad to see how this issue has become a kind of not only a disturbance or an irritant, but a really game changer, negatively speaking, in the relationship. It's for the two sides to define how to get out of it. I hope it'll be solved one way or another, but don't turn irritants into political games. That's a big issue.
Well, that's a fair analysis. But last question to you, Ambassador. As someone who's been here for over a decade, and we have discussed the length and breadth of the relations between India and Denmark, what would be your top objectives now? I'm sure you have left behind a huge legacy of your own work here, but in the next few years, if you continue to remain here in New Delhi, in this beautiful house, what would be your top priorities by which you would want people to remember not just you, but your country's efforts and work here in the context of the bilateral ties?
I am leaving very soon, so my diplomatic career is coming to a closure. What I hope, I will come back to India, but that will be in a different role and capacity. I have a passion for your nation.
Right.
I want this nation to grow. I want this nation to really set new standards in green transition, in democracy, in how we move 1.4 billion people from very different life conditions towards something which is bigger, better, greener, and more sustainable. So that's a little bit my ambition, and I think I will put it in the following way, or two one-liners to it. Viksit Bharat, there can be different views politically about it, but I'm a strong supporter of it. Why should we not support a vision which is meant at securing that each and every person will be given better opportunities as he or she will enjoy today? So that's a big thing. But I also do hope that Viksit Bharat will turn into Viksit Dunya, because India has a lot to offer. I saw the Adani counter. I saw the Mundra sat with the Gautam Adani and his family members and his top leadership. The dedication, the risk-taking to be so important that you are investing not only in your own business, but in your society, in your nation. Being a nation builder is so important. The second part to it is that we in the West cannot, should not blame others. We should not teach nor preach. We should be a source of inspiration. And we have a lot of experience. We have a lot that we can bring to India and other parts of the world which are undergoing a kind of transition. We should be a source of inspiration, but we should also take inspiration from India. You are having a very strong focus on affordability.
Right.
You have a very strong focus on resilience. That could also help us in building up our own society. So it's not just a one-way track, but it's a two-way track. And finally, and most importantly, I'm not into what I call day trading diplomacy. Something can happen this morning, something can happen in the afternoon. Should I spend my time on that? Not necessarily. As long as what I'm doing with my colleagues is targeting the long-term perspective, objective of this nation, namely to secure that all Indians will have better social, economic possibilities and opportunities, but still preserving your culture, still preserving your identity. So a strong, independent India, that's what we need. And I hope to see that, even though I would not have many years left in my fantastic life. But my decade with India has been so enriching, and it has opened my mind, my heart and my body. So I know that this world will be even better if India succeeds. India can succeed on its own, but if we will be inspiring you and we take inspiration from you, it will be beneficial to all of us. So Dhanyavad, Mr. Kaul.
Enriching words. Thank you very much. Namaskar. but also I hope now that a Viksit Denmark and a Viksit Bharat together will ensure a Viksit Dunia. Thank you very much, Ambassador Freddy.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Pleasure.
For joining us.
Thank you.